The next uh, prophecy relates to Ali radiallahu anhu suppressing the Kharijites. And in this prophecy, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that Ali radiallahu anhu will one day suppress a splintered faction among the Muslims. So he says something to the effect that the Muslims will separate into two factions, and from the two factions, or maybe from one of them, one group will splinter. And the more correct among the two factions will fight the group that splintered. And it so happened that Ali radiallahu anhu, he was leading the army from Kufa. He was the Khalifa. He was the one who fought this splintered group, who later came to be known as the Kharijites. And he turned out to be the more correct of the two factions as per the tradition of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other faction was the army of Sham, led by Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So Ali radiallahu anhu comes out more correct, and he fought the rebels in the Battle of Nahrawan in the year 37 Hijri, making him and his army the more correct and non-transgressing party. And we covered that earlier when we talked about the history of, or the salient features of the history of the time of Ali radiallahu anhu. Regarding the roots of the Kharijites, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was once accused of inequity by a hypocrite known as Dhul Khuwaisira. And the companions wanted to kill him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, punish him actually for his insult of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, leave him be. And then he said few other things, which I have not presented here. And he referred to him and his group that will emerge later on, that they will recite the Quran, but it will not pass beyond their throats to their hearts. They will read the Quran, but not understand it. They will exit the religion as an arrow passes through a game animal, whereby one would look at the arrowhead and not see any traces of blood on it. One would look at the binding which fastens the arrowhead to the rod and not see any traces on it. One would look at the rod and not see any traces on it. One would look at the feathers and not see any traces on them. It would go straight through the bowels and the blood. Their sign will be a black man whose limbs will appear like a woman's breasts or like a disfigured lump of flesh. They will emerge at a time when the people are disunited. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was most possibly referring to that period of disunity that we mentioned in the earlier slide between him and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. The narrator Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu adds, I testify that I certainly heard this hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and I testify that Ali bin Abi Talib fought them and that I was with him. He instructed that we search for this man mentioned in the previous slide, that his limbs would be like the breast, woman's breast, or like a disfigured lump of flesh. So Ali radiallahu anhu instructed that we search for this man. He was eventually found and brought to Ali radiallahu anhu, and I saw that man appeared exactly as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had described him. Subhanallah. Repairing the rift, once Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam took his uh, grandson, Al-Hasan, Raziyallahu anhu, and ascended the pulpit. And he said that this son of mine will be a leader of group in paradise. And he will, Allah Ta'ala may cause him to repair rift between two dissenting factions. Perhaps Allah Ta'ala will use him to reconcile between two disputing factions of Muslims. And that's exactly what happened. After Ali Raziyallahu Anhu was killed, by Kharijite, Hassan Raziyallahu Anhu was declared as the fifth Khalifa. But Muawiyah was fighting with Ali Raziyallahu Anhu from the very beginning of the Khilafat of Ali Raziyallahu Anhu. So Muawiyah didn't accept Hassan Raziyallahu Anhu as the Khalifa, naturally. If he doesn't accept Ali Raziyallahu Anhu, he won't accept Hassan Raziyallahu Anhu, his son, Ali Raziyallahu Anhu's son. So Hassan Raziyallahu Anhu made the wise decision that he will withdraw and thereby reconcile between two highly charged factions of Muslims. So he single-handedly mended a long and tragic split between the Muslims of Kufa and those of Sham by abdicating his Khilafat to Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. By doing so, he unified two great factions of believers and allowed the progress of Islam to regain its momentum for decades, based on a writing by a scholar. So another fulfilled prophecy of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also foretold that at this precise point, the Muslim nation would transition from a khilafat to a kingdom. So he prophesied that after him, there will be khilafat based on his pattern of ruling, meaning based on Quran and Sunnah. And that would last for 30 years. And that lasted exactly 30 years. 2 years and 3 months of Abu Bakr Raziyallahu Anhu, his khilafat. Umar Raziyallahu Anhu's khilafat was about 10 years and few months. Uthman Raziyallahu Anhu's khilafat was 12 years and few months. Ali Raziyallahu Anhu's khilafat was 5 years and few months. And then Hassan Raziyallahu Anhu was Khalifa for 6 months, total 30 years. Ibn al-Arabi, a highly accomplished scholar in different fields of knowledge, says, and the promise of the truthful, meaning Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, came to pass. The period of the Khilafat neither exceeded nor fell short a day. So glory be to the all-encompassing Almighty. There is no other Lord but He. Another prophecy fulfilled. Cycling back to virtue is promised. In this hadith, what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says is his period will be the best, and then Khilafat, and then there'll be decline among the Muslims, further decline. And then one day, he doesn't mention the time period, there'll be rule according to Khilafat. In an explicit hadith about the forms of governance the Muslim nation would experience, Hudayfa bin al-Yaman reported that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Risalat will remain amongst you for as long as Allah wishes. And Allah will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it. And there will be a khilafat upon Risalat methodology. It will last for as long as Allah wishes it to last. Then Allah will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it. Then there will be an abiding dynasty, and it will remain for as long as Allah wishes it to remain. Then Allah will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it. Then there will be a tyrannical, forceful kingship, and it will remain for as long as Allah wishes it to remain. Then He will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it. And then there will be a khilafat upon Risalat methodology. So if we come back to this tradition, Risalat will remain amongst you for as long as Allah wishes it. And in other tradition, the time period given is 30 years. Khilafat is 30 years. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's rule in Medina was 10 years. Then Allah will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it, and there will be a khilafat upon Risalat methodologies. This is what we get from another tradition, that it will last for 30 years, and it lasted for 30 years as we discussed. It will last for as long as Allah wishes it to last, and Allah will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it. Then there will be an abiding dynasty. So after the Khulafai Rashidin, which lasted 30 years, Muawiyah became the Khalifa, or declared himself the Khalifa. And after him, as per treaty with Hassan Raziallahu Anhu, either Hassan Raziallahu Anhu, if he was alive, or Hussein Raziallahu Anhu, I'm saying from my memory, will be the Khalifa. But Muawiyah nominated his son Yazid I as the Khalifa. That means, in other words, it became dynasty, an abiding dynasty, in the words of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And after that, it continued for about 91 years of the Umayyad dynasty. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and it is all near meaning because this is translation, then Allah will remove it whenever He wishes to remove it. Then there will be a tyrannical, forceful kingship, and it will remain for as long as Allah wishes it to remain. And I'm saying from my understanding, may Allah forgive me if I'm wrong, that here the reference is to the rule of the Abbasid, who came to power after overthrowing the Umayyads. And the justification of the term tyrannical, or at least one of the justifications, can be made from the fact that when they came to rule, they announced that all the Umayyads who surrender will be saved, meaning they will not be punished. Amnesty. But as history records, Allah knows best, the Abbasids put to the sword all the Umayyad clan who surrendered. And they ruled until 1258 AD, until the invasion of the Mongols. Actually, later on, they became fractured. Their height was possibly, the height of their rule was possibly during the time of Harun al-Rashid and Mamun al-Rashid. And then they started losing territory as different dynasties. They exerted themselves in different areas. And by the time the Mongols came, the Abbasid rule was hardly around outside Baghdad, so that they were so fractured that they could not face the onslaught of the Mongols, and faced and suffered terrible annihilation and bloodshed to the tune of 800,000 to 2 million Muslims, men, women, and children killed. Possibly the worst period in Muslim rule. And the hadith of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam continues, then he will remove, Allah will remove it whenever he wishes to remove it. And then there will be a khilafat upon Risalat methodology. I've looked at history. I couldn't find coming back to Risalat, at least up until our time. The term Khalifa was used by different rulers, but to me it seemed that they were just kings. They were using the term Khalifa to hoodwink the people. As long as they consider that they are the sole rulers, they do not rule as per Quran and Sunnah. And as long as they do not leave monarchy and son becoming the Khalifa or the king, inheriting kingship, so it remains kingship. And as long as they do not use Baitul Mal as public property, but use it for their own enjoyment and grandeur, it remains kingship. So I haven't seen a period in which Khilafat was restored after the first 4 Khalifas. And then there's a prophecy on Umar bin Abdul Aziz, the coming of Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He was the only person from among the Umayyads and among the Abbasids who ruled as a Khalifa, a pure, simple Khalifa with austere lifestyle, not living in palace, not taking the protection of 10,000 soldiers in the palace, and not using Baitul Mal as his property, but taking a stipend from their bare minimum stipend and living in a very modest house and ruling as per Quran and Sunnah, except for his 2 years and 3 months. I don't see any time period after the first 4 Khalifas who were ruling based on Quran and Sunnah. So the guess we can make is that this refers to a time period before the end of times when Isa alayhi salam will rule. That is what I can infer to the best of my knowledge, and Allah knows best, and may Allah forgive me. So we end at this point for today. We'll continue thereafter in the next halqa. May Allah Ta'ala give us the tawfiq, and may Allah Ta'ala enable us to understand that what comes from the mouth of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is infallible. And what comes to us as coming from him, if that is from authentic source, that will be infallible. And so all these prophecies and their fulfillment shows to us that we have to take the word of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam very seriously, as we take the word of the Quran very seriously. May Allah Ta'ala give us the understanding. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad لا إله إلا الله الحليم الكريم سبحان الله رب العرش العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك وغنيمة من كل بر وسلامة من كل إثم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا دينا إلا قضيته ولا مجاهدا إلا نصرته ولا مظلوما إلا نصرته ولا مسلما إلا رحمته ولا حاجة هي لك رضا إلا قضيتها يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم أسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا واخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين ربنا إننا سمعنا منادي أن ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد اللهم أنت سلام ومنك سلام وتباركت يا ذو الجلال والإكرام اللهم إنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك اللهم أسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واهد الناس جميعا ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما ربي اجعلني مقيم الصلاة ومن ذريتي ربنا تقبل دعاء ও আল্লাহ তুমি আমাদেরকে যা কিছু আমল করার তৌফিক দিয়েছো বলার ও শোনার তৌফিক দিয়েছো তার ভুল ভ্রান্তি সংশোধন করে তোমার শাহী দরবারে কবুল করো আল্লাহ এবং আমাদের আপনজন নিকটজন প্রিয়জন তাদের কাছে পৌঁছে দিও তার সওয়াব আল্লাহ রাসূলুল্লাহ সাল্লাল্লাহু আলাইহি ওয়াসাল্লামের জরিয়ায় আমাদের দোয়া কবুল করো আল্লাহ ওনার কাছে পৌঁছে দিও সওয়াব আগে এবং তারপরে আমাদের আপনজন প্রিয়জন নিকটজনের কাছে পৌঁছে দিও আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ তাদের কবরের মধ্যে তাদের তোমার সর্বোত্তম ব্যবহার দেখিও হাসরের ময়দানে তোমার সর্বোত্তম ব্যবহার দেখিও আল্লাহ পুলসিরাত বিদ্যুতের গতিতে পার করে দিও আল্লাহ বিনা হিসাবে জান্নাতুল ফেরদৌসে দাখিল করো আল্লাহ এবং তুমি আমাদেরকে আমাদের পিছনের গুনাহ মাফ করে দিও আল্লাহ আমাদেরকে হেদায়েত করো আল্লাহ আমাদের সামনের জীবন যাতে সমুজ্জ্বল হয় আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ আমাদের ঈমান তরুতাজা করতে থাকো আল্লাহ আমাদের আমল সুন্দর করে দাও আল্লাহ তোমার প্রতি দায় দায়িত্ব তোমার বান্দার প্রতি দায় দায়িত্ব পরিপূর্ণভাবে যাতে আমরা করতে পারি উঠতে বসতে তোমাকে স্মরণ করতে পারি প্রতিটা দিন এলেমের সাথে আমরা জুড়ে থাকি আমলের সাথে জুড়ে থাকি আল্লাহ তোমার বান্দাদের প্রতি পৌঁছাবার তৌফিক দান করো আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ তোমার তোমার রিজামন্দির কারণ তোমার রিজামন্দির জন্য যাতে তোমার আমল করতে পারি আল্লাহ তোমার ভালোবাসা অন্তরে নিয়ে তোমার আমল করতে পারি আল্লাহ শয়তানের থেকে নফসের থেকে এবং দুনিয়ার চাকচিক্যের থেকে আমাদেরকে প্রতিটা মুহূর্তে হেফাজত করে আল্লাহ আল্লাহ হাত ধরে কবর পর্যন্ত নিয়ে যেও এবং শয়তানের শেষ চেষ্টা ব্যর্থ করে দিও এবং যখন তুমি আমাদের উপর সন্তুষ্ট থাকো আল্লাহ তখন তুমি আমাদেরকে নিয়ে যেও আল্লাহ কলেমা সহ যাতে তোমার সর্বোত্তম ব্যবহার আমরা কবরে পাই এবং হাসরের ময়দানে পাই এবং পুলসিরাত পার হতে পারি বিদ্যুতের গতিতে এবং বিনা হিসাবে জান্নাতুল ফেরদৌসে দাখিল হতে পারি আল্লাহ সেই তৌফিক তুমি দান করো আল্লাহ আমরা বিভিন্ন নেক হাজতে হাত উঠিয়েছি বিভিন্ন বিপদ আপদের কারণে হাত উঠিয়েছি বিভিন্ন বালা মুসিবত অসুখ বিসুখের কারণে হাত উঠিয়েছি আল্লাহ তুমি নিমেষের মধ্যে যা দূর করে দিতে পারো আল্লাহ তুমি আমাদেরকে রক্ষা করো হিদায়ত করো হেফাজত করো মাগফিরাত করো আল্লাহ সমস্ত মুসলমানকে মাগফিরাত করো সমস্ত মানুষকে হেদায়ত করো আল্লাহ সবাইকে তুমি কবুল করে নাও আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ তুমি আমাদেরকে নেক হায়াত দান করো আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ তুমি আমাদেরকে তোমার দ্বীনের মেহনতের জন্য কবুল করো আল্লাহ ও আল্লাহ আল্লাহ নবী যে কাজ আমাদের জন্য রেখে গিয়েছেন সেই কাজ করার তৌফিক দান করো আল্লাহ তুমি আমাদের কবুল করো আল্লাহ তোমার রহমতের ছায়া তলে আমাদের ঠাঁই দিও আল্লাহ اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب يا قاضي الحاجات يا رفيع الدرجات يا حلال المشكلات يا مجيب الدعوات برحمتك نستغيث يا أول الأولين يا آخر الآخرين يا أكرم الأكرمين يا رحم الراحمين يا راحم المساكين يا ذي القوة المتين ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وحق لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم آمين يا رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين آمين يا رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will meet on next Sunday. সামনে রোববারে আবার দেখা হবে। একে অপরকে দাওয়াত দিই এবং একে অপরের জন্য দোয়া করি। আসসালামু আলাইকুম ওয়া রাহমাতুল্লাহি ওয়া বারাকাতুহু।